This weekend interview is powered by Precision Fuel and Hydration. I've been using their products for years. I was thinking today when I first started using them, can't remember exact date, but I've ran my fastest marathons. 2 of my last 3 marathons have been my fastest, and I've had Precision 90-gram gels in the side of my half tights. And I love how I can have 90 grams of carbs in my half tights, one each leg, 180 total, and be able to get a stack of fuel down. So it's powered by Precision Fuel and Hydration. Chances are that you're gearing up for a race yourself, but how dialed in is your race day nutrition? Precision Fuel and Hydration makes it simple with a free online planner. So you can go to their website, precisionhydration.com, and while you're there, place your first order and you get 15% off when you use the code IRP2026.
This week's guest finished 9th at the 2001 World Championships in the 5,000 metres. During his career, he held Norwegian records at 2,000, 3,000 and 5,000 metres, which stood for over 20 years. He competed at 2 Olympic Games and has a 5K PB of 13:06. Despite having a successful career on the track, he's probably better known for being the pioneer of the Norwegian method and double threshold training. A massive welcome to the Inside Running podcast, Marius Bakken.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Marius, for giving up some of your Monday morning. I haven't really heard you on English podcasts before, so it's such a privilege to have you on. Have you done any English podcasts before?
No, not really. You know, I have my medical practice. I have 3 kids under 12 years old, and I do my 5 to 6 days times a week training. So I have little time. So that's basically why.
Yeah, and Sydney 2000 was your first Olympics, and do you have any sort of memories from that experience?
I mean, I love Australia. I've been there several times, so that's one memory. You know, I do like Australia. The other memory is, of course, running in the Olympics the first time, and the stadium, you know, the huge stadium in Sydney, and just the experience of, you know, getting into the stadium and doing something that I had dreamt about for my whole life. I mean, that was my ultimate dream, to run in the Olympics.
Yeah, it's quite surreal. I mentioned in the emails that we had back and forwards that I was actually in the stadium that night that you ran your 5K heat, because I found a few photos a few weeks back with the 3 Aussies. I think there was Craig Mottram, Mike Power and Mizan Mahari. And when you're on the circuit, did you become friends with many of the Australians?
Yeah, I mean, I knew Craig Mottram. I was also in London, actually, and trained a little bit with Craig. This was late in my career, like in 2005, 2006. I went over to London and to Nick Bidois and Craig, and I stayed there for about a week. I knew the guys. In my time, most of the runners were African runners on the circuit, you know, in the finals of the big championships, and just a few of us from outside of Africa, actually. And Craig was, of course, one of them.
Yeah, well, that's like, I think, you know, when we read through your accolades of, you know, running 13:06, like in today's standards, like 13:06 is not amazing. But if we look at the context, like in the 90s and early to mid 2000s, like there weren't that many non-Africans running either under 13 minutes or low 13 minutes. There's probably, you know, Bob Kennedy, Mottram, Mark Carroll, Alberto Garcia, Antonio Pinto, maybe a couple of other Spanish, but we're talking like probably less than 10. Yeah,
that's correct. And if you look at 2004, I was the fastest runner in Europe for the 5K with 13:06, and the next guy was like 13:10, 13:11. And last year it was 19 guys, you know, faster than my time. So they've changed a lot since I was running, and it's likely, you know, partly due to training. I think the training is better now, and also, of course, shoes in training and competition. So it's a combination. But it's interesting. The scene I was running at the time was quite different. It was, you know, just dominated by Kenyan and Ethiopian runners.
Yeah. Obviously, this podcast, we're going to chat a lot about the Norway method and double threshold training. But did you ever think that it would become as popular as it has? And how does it make you feel knowing that you're the godfather of a training method that has contributed to world records and Olympic gold medals?
At the time when I was competing myself, I knew that this training was an effective way of doing it. I came into the scene knowing that I didn't have the talent or the ability to compete with African runners without doing something different. That was the whole rationale for the method. Knowing now that this type of training is being used by runners on the elite level, but also on the recreational level, it's nice, mostly due to the fact that I think it's a better way of training long term, staying injury free, and also running faster. That's the main thing, and that's the beauty of it. You get faster, but you also stay injury free, and you can for years after year run faster and faster.
Yeah. Well, I said to you before we recorded that I've had some experience in, I guess, using your method, although I've never done 2 sessions in the one day, but just for the listeners, and I'm sure some of the listeners have heard the story, but in 2022, earlier in the year, also late 2021, I'd had a calf strain and also COVID. And I remember going out and running 10 kilometers in, 45 minutes. The next day I had DOMS. That's how unfit I was. And then I was chatting to Christian Ulrichsen from Norway and said, oh, look, I think I want to give this sort of Norwegian system a go. And I basically rotated between, on a Tuesday, it was 400s off 30-second recovery, K reps off a minute, and then maybe a 40-second hill session every sort of third week. And then the Friday session was just 6-minute reps. And over the course of 3 months, I went from that to 30-30 for 10K at the age of 42. So I know it works. And so never did I think I would get the opportunity to speak to the person who actually invented this style of training. So I have a heap of questions, but rather than me ask you all these questions, let's start with what is the Norwegian system or double threshold training, and how did you come across it?
Yeah, like I said, I written a book now trying to explain it. It's 330 pages long, going into the whole rationale around the method. The start always was in the 90s. Like I said, I was trying to run as fast as I possibly could in a scene dominated by African runners. And my thinking was this: how can I get the most effective training with the lowest risk and for the best long-term development that is different than what is currently being used? That was the setting I was working from. What I found out, first through being a middle distance runner and being coached by Peter Coe and being introduced to double threshold back in 1995, and later with more intensity control over training, was that I could do a substantial training in terms of load and dosage by doing the training right below the anaerobic threshold. And that also allowed me to double up the training the same day, as long as I had an easy day afterwards. So I found a narrow area of intensity where I could do much more work than what it was normal for that period. And that was the start of the development. And then I did my 5,500 lactic acid testing, and I was doing this experimentation over a 10-year, 15-year period to get to the final structure that was that appeared in 2004, really, the normal Norwegian week. That's the week I did it first time in 2004. So it was a long period of experimentation, and it was controversial at the time. I was in constant debate over the training. So it was not a conventional type of doing it.
Yeah. And so in developing this system, what things did you try that you realized didn't work?
I tried everything. I came from middle distances, so I did my training together with Peter Coe. He was my coach for a few years. I was coached by Sam Bell, the former coach of Bob Kennedy. So I had this very, very good coaches. but the focus was on more like speed-oriented training, more on variation. The Norwegian method is more about precision than variation. We try to steer away from variation unless it's something that you absolutely have to do. So we do the training on a precise matter, not within like a variation framework. So it's a quite different way of training. So in the process, I did threshold every day. I did intense training mixed up with threshold training. I tried the different training zones in terms of lactate, like the low and the high zone of the threshold area. I had seasons where I ran very, very poorly because I didn't, hit the right intensity. So it was on and off all the time. And then finally I got a few years at the end where I could use the system full out.
Yeah, and when you got that sort of balance right with, the 2 sessions on a Tuesday, the 2 sessions on a Thursday, and a Saturday session, how many weeks of stringing that together before you sort of went, oh, I'm onto something here?
Now, I was close for a long time. I was doing, like small variation to it, but this was in 2004, and I knew almost immediately that this was it. I was running much faster on sessions than I would normally do, and I kept on running faster and faster week after week. That's how I did 13:06. I think I could have done a few seconds faster just in that race. I was very, very close to my maximum potential, but I was running alone for most of the race. They were doing the world record pace. So I think that was very, very close to my potential. And that structure is also, built around muscle tone that I write in the book about in like 2 chapters, like going full in on muscle tone. And that was the beauty of it. You could do a lot of training, but staying in like a perfect balance.
Yeah. And what did your competitors think about this way? Like, did your competitors know that you were training this way, and what was their thoughts on it?
I mean, I had an old website, mariusbakken.com. It's still there. It's still up and going. I publish on double thresholds and stuff like that. But it was still there in 2000. I was blogging in 2000 and had a message board. So I was discussing on that message board, like together with guys like Steve Magnus. He was the young brother, and he's also written the foreword of my English book now. So people knew that I was doing this type of training. But like I said, I don't think anyone was doing the same, or I know that nobody was doing the same, and it was just a constant argument with other like coaches and runners. I mean, friendly, but in discussion, because this was different.
Just reading your book, like it sounds like you surrounded yourself by some like really influential figures. Like you've mentioned a couple of them, like Peter Coe, Sam Bell. Even like Joe Newton, who was in regular contact with Arthur Lydiard, and then Carsten Warholm's coach as well.
Yeah, that's correct. So I've been very, very lucky in my career to have really smart guys around me, and and in addition to the guys you were mentioning, I had my old coach Per Halle, he was 7th in the Olympics in '72. When Prefontaine was 4th, and he lived just a few hundred meters away from me. And I also had a guy called Frank Evertsen who was doing like lactic acid testing in the 90s. So I was lucky. At the same time, I think also I had the ability to connect to people that I knew had something to teach me. Yeah. So I was searching for these guys. I mean, I wasn't passive. I was searching for the people that I had a feeling they could help structure this type of training and put everything together. So I would bring in knowledge and I would try to structure it the best way possible.
Yeah. So the thing I always struggled with when I was doing it was, trying to work out. So there's a lot of literature around the, 2400s off 30 seconds recovery, K reps off a minute, 6 minute reps off a minute. like what sort of intensity are we talking? Like let's maybe start with the 400. So when you were doing 20 to 25 400s off 30 seconds recovery,
Yeah.
is that 5K pace, somewhere between 5 and 10K pace, assuming the weather's good and things like that?
Well, it depends. It depends on the lactate, So that's the thing. You start with looking at intensity control before pace. So early in the season, it will obviously be slower, and it will increase in pace as you get faster to the racing period. In terms of lactate, it will generally be around 3.0 in lactate, like building up to that. A little bit over at the end of the session, it's okay, and a little bit lower in the beginning. And when you're in peak shape, it will be not far off your 5K pace. In the early period of the training, it will be around your 10K maybe. So that's the whole point of it. You control it by intensity and like the internal load, not the external load and the actual pace. And that's the whole thinking. You need to do precision in terms of intensity and not be focused on pace itself.
Yeah.
It's secondary.
Yeah. And so then obviously if you're doing K reps, they're going to be slower than the 400s.
Yeah.
Potentially, 10 seconds a K slower than 400?
Yeah, and that's the point also, that's the variation you get. And that's why you have the different, the length of the session, both the sessions and also the intervals. The difference there, it's part of the point. You would like the muscular system to have some variation, and you would also like it to be close enough to race pace. And with threshold training, you get close enough, and by doing the intervals, it will be just fast enough compared to continuous running, and you will also get the range of the pace by doing different type of sessions at different pace. It's also the reason why you usually do shorter reps in the evening and longer in the morning. Then you have a longer range. In general, you run slower in the morning for most sessions. If you do the lactate testing, you will see that. And therefore, you do it long in the morning, short in the evening to get the biggest range you can get and get as fast as possible at the threshold in the evening. So it's like the whole system is built around that type of thinking.
Yeah. And with the 6-minute reps, a lot of people would think, you run those around threshold, which is like, roughly 60-minute race pace or whatever.
Yeah.
But in your book, you would actually run them slower than your 60-minute race pace.
Yeah, that's what I call the golden zone, which is it's a sub-threshold pace. I wrote about this already in 2000 on my website, and the article is still there. Where I wrote you should be about 0.4 to 0.6 below the threshold, like in an ideal session on average in that session. What I found out was that the muscular impact of going just at the threshold, it's quite a lot more than going under the threshold. In the book, I write about something called the inflection point, which is like a point where the muscle tone increased disproportionately to the actual load, and it's important to see below that, especially for double threshold. So you have this narrow range where we have to try to do the interval sessions in order to balance load in terms of risk and in terms of effect.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the big takeaways, was the whole relationship between muscle tone and elasticity. And so, as you're saying, if you're running above threshold, that muscle tone really increases, elasticity decreases, and it takes more than a day to actually recover from that.
Yeah, and the other thing I point out, that you lose control over the recovery window, which is the big thing. Sometimes you can recover after a threshold or a session above the threshold in a day or two. Sometimes it will take 3 days. So it'll make it much more risky, which is also why I recommend 2 days after the normal hill session in the Norwegian method. That's due to the fact that you need to have control over the recovery window after those intense sessions, much more than after double threshold. You can get away with one day. So that's the whole point about it.
And if people don't have access to lactate monitors and lactate testing, how do they work out their zones for these 400s, 1K reps and 6-minute reps?
I write about that in my book. You have different ways of doing it. I would say that the more inaccurate the method is, the more or margin you need to put in there. That's the main point. If you do the lactate testing, you can go close to the zones that I describe in the book. If you do by heart rate, in general, you'll be about 80 to 87%. If you're doing 1 or 2 times a day training, and a little bit lower if you like a recreational runner doing 3 or 4 sessions a week. But if you do other methods than the lactate testing, you'd also like to supplement with several methods, like the talk test. You try to do a sentence in your running, and you get to 3 to 5 words, and you have to take a breath. Then you're close to the threshold. So what I call the triangulation, you have 3 methods, and you cross-check those methods. That's better than one method if you're not doing the lactate testing.
Yeah. And look, most of our listeners probably won't be interested in doing actual double threshold days, but
yeah.
what would be an indicator that somebody's actually ready to be able to do double threshold? Is it a certain amount of years of running, a certain amount of weekly mileage? What would your recommendation be about somebody who's ready for double threshold?
First of all, you need to be injury-free. Second of all, you need to know where your actual threshold is and be experienced with it, so you know that you're hitting like the sub-threshold training for the sessions. That's the second thing. The third thing is either you would like to have more training in your total load, or you have trouble with like the normal week in terms of if you have a job situation, you're doing static work during the week, and you would like to concentrate load on the weekends, then double threshold works really well for like a normal recreational runner. Or if you're doing like more elite or sub-elite, and you're going into a plateau and you would like to increase like the total load, double threshold it's very, very good for that way of doing training.
Yeah. And because your, I guess, method is very much controlled and you're never really pushing yourself over the edge too much, would you schedule recovery weeks, or you would just try and keep every week very sort of stable and similar?
Yeah, I go into that in my book. Like personally, I changed my training over to a flat structure late in my career, where I would use altitude training like for periodization. But in general, you have different ways of doing it. You can do it like 2 weeks on and then 1 week more easy trainings, or you can do it like a flat profile, for example. So it depends on what type of runner you are.
Yeah. And in terms of the length of these, sessions, like in that sort of that golden circle, like is it 30 minutes of work per session? Can you get away with 20 minutes? Can you go up to 40 minutes? What's too little and what's too much?
And I would say if you're doing like 3 to 5 sessions a week, 20 to 25 minutes is perfectly fine. If you're doing more than that, 30 to 40 minutes looks like to be like a sweet spot, but you need to do it in intervals. If you're doing it continuously, it'll be much more demanding. And that's also due to the muscular system, muscle tone. You'll get the short break will decrease the muscle tone within the session. So the total recovery period will be influenced by how you structure the actual workout as well. So that's something to take into consideration. This method is based on interval training, not continuous work.
Yeah. And when you were doing this method, were you racing regularly, or does this method work better off having a really long period of just that consistent training and then having a race period? How did it look for you?
I think it depends on what type of runner you are again. In my case, I had to optimize things very, very closely. So I couldn't be racing too much during the build-up period. Then, of course, you have Jakob Ingebrigtsen. He can do indoor races very, very fast off the method. So it depends a little bit on what type of athletes you are. And also how easy it is for you to put in there like a fast, what I call the X session every week. Some athletes, they will get away with 1 or 2 sessions on the track after doing hill work in the winter, and they're off to go. So it depends.
Yeah, and I think this next question is going to be a bit about depends as well, but there's been a lot of literature around, I suppose, the general week of the 400s, the Ks, the 6-minute reps, not so much around the tuning up sessions for a race. Like even with the the Ingebrigtsens, it's like we always hear about their double threshold days and what they're actually doing from a session point of view, but we don't hear as much about, okay, how far out from a major race are they sort of changing that up and adding some more intensity? And what do those sessions sort of look like?
Now, I would say, first of all, I think one of the reasons why I don't hear much about it is it's not the most important thing. And the most important thing is what happens with the threshold work the rest of the year. That's first. The second thing is, the most important thing is to not do anything that will bring the threshold pace to a low during that period. That's the second thing. So I talk in the book about something I call like drip load. You drip in the more anaerobic type of work, and you do it very gradually in a period of time over weeks. I have a long piece where I explain what happens to Karsten Warholm, and this is something I've been discussing with his coach quite a bit. Karsten does actual threshold work the whole fall of his training. What happens is when he does 1 or 2 anaerobic sessions, like in the early winter, he will immediately start to produce way higher lactate levels on the threshold sessions immediately. And it seems like it's a switch. You sort of give the body a signal of what kind of system that will be prioritized for an upcoming event. And I think that's a key to remember. If you do too much anaerobic work and you do it too immediately, then you'll be in a situation where the body would choose an anaerobic pathway too early. And that's something you see with Karsten, which is a great example. He's very, very anaerobic tuned, and he's like pushing a button. So that's why in getting close to the season, you drip load very gradually, more and more of the intense work, usually once a week. You start with type 200 meters, and then we can increase to 400 meters and 1,000 meters. Just do it very, very, very easy and simple. That's the main way to think about it.
And this drip feeding, are you sort of drip feeding that at the back end of one of these threshold sessions, or it's its own session by itself?
Yeah, usually it's the X session, like the traditional hill session in the winter. You will use that session instead for like a track session or something like that to get into the season. So that's how you do it. You switch over from the hill session and to like a flat session instead.
Yeah. So I guess limitations on the double threshold system or the Norway method in terms of, we've sort of seen it with Jakob, great at 1,500, 5K, probably 10K, but, with the marathon, like half marathon, because I believe that you sort of never really did a long run. And in your book, I believe you sort of cover this, but how do you adopt the Norway method, but adapt it for marathoners?
Yeah, in general, I would say that for the long distances, you need a duration, of course, and with the double threshold, for the 5K, for example, in the summer period, you would, of course, use it like whenever you need to bring up the threshold a little bit higher again, but other than that, you can, put it on side. It will be the same for the half and the marathon. When you get into the specific weeks leading up to it, like let's say 3 or 4 months before, you would leave the double threshold and do more specific, longer duration in and out type of training, like Canova style instead. The point with double threshold, it's a way of getting the threshold as high as possible for the least risk. And at a certain point, you are where you would like to be, and that's when you put it aside, but you still measure to see that the actual pace is high enough during like the preparation period or the race period. So you have an idea where you need to be, and you use double threshold to get there, and then you make sure that you sustain it during the actual like racing season or the preparation season. That's the point.
Yeah. And if somebody was only doing two interval sessions a week, say a Tuesday and a Friday, would you like suggest increasing, like, do they make the sessions a little bit longer? Do they increase the intensity a little bit? Because obviously there's not quite as much stress if you're only doing quality twice a week.
Yeah, of course. If you're doing it twice a week, that's the point. But I would say if you're doing twice a week, you can for sure do double threshold on one day and then something more specific on the other day. Okay. So if you do that for a marathon, of course you can still do double threshold on a Tuesday. I would probably recommend that, and then on something marathon specific on the other day.
Yeah, no, it's good. I'd love you to speak a little bit about, and this is probably the biggest takeaway for me from what I've read so far of the book, is recovery days. I am well known for, running my recovery days fairly quick. And your book actually opened up my eyes in terms of the whole muscle tone, elasticity, and the reason why one sessions cannot be too hard because it takes too long for that muscle tone to come down. But also if you're running the easy runs too quick, you just start to slowly dig yourself into a hole. So what are your recommendations for recovery runs? How long is too long for a recovery run, and what sort of effort should they be?
Yeah, this, like you said, this goes straight into muscle tone. The point is, on a certain day, like from morning to evening, you would like to have as much as possible load, as specific as possible, with the least risk as possible, which is like double threshold or like a combination of sessions. But then what happens, the reason why it works, it's like a big block of training. The stress response and the muscle tone and the price you have to pay for that comes the day after. So if you do your recovery runs a little bit too fast on the easy day, you will do that in a period where the muscle tone is higher, and you will not give it a chance to go down again. And that will be, a negative effect long term. And it's like the way to overtraining and the way to not get the effect out of the hard training days. So I'm a big fan of doing easy running on the easy days. No sprints, no weight training. Just try in as much possible a way to recover by doing the easy runs below 70% of max heart rate. And think about it as a way of bringing muscle tone down, because that's the main reason why I do that. You do have some mileage going in there. You have, the effect of doing running in general on the easy days, but the main thing is bringing muscle tone down.
Yeah, and so not even strides on recovery days, because I know back here in Australia, it's very common for people to say either do some strides Monday afternoon before a Tuesday session, or do them on a Thursday before a Friday session. So you wouldn't recommend that at all?
No, if you need to do strides, first of all, I have to discuss why strides. That's one thing. But if you would like to do that, do it after the threshold session. It can help to bring the muscle tone a little bit faster down, so do it after the hill session or after the threshold session. I see no reason to do it on the easy days, at least unless you've experimented with it and done it over time, after you first try to do easy running only on easy days. Before races, it can be different between a race. If you're well rested going into a race, some will experience better racing feeling if they do strides the day before. It's individual.
Yeah. So you're generally not a massive fan of strides for the sake of just doing strides?
No, what is the rationale for it? You will not get faster. You will not get any muscle fiber adaptation from it. You can say, okay, I'm getting used to running at race pace, but you can do that on the X session once a week. There's no clear reason to do the strides, except that it can influence muscle tone in a positive way. But if you think that, and I do think that can happen, it's being done on the wrong day. You would like to do it after the hard session, not on the easy day. You can be lucky if your muscular system is well balanced. It can have a positive effect doing it on the easy day, but it can also be negative. So that's why you can lose control over the recovery period. So it's like it can be a win, it could be a loss, and you don't know that. That's why I prefer doing it on the hard days if you would like to do it.
Yeah. And if someone's doing double threshold, warm ups and cool downs fairly short.
Yeah, there's a couple ways to do it. Fairly short, of course, and I'm also a big fan of doing one threshold run before each interval session that is standardized. So you do 5 minutes, for example. You do 1 5-minute run before all the session. Like a standard session would be 30 times 1 minute or something like that. You would still do 1 time 5 minutes on the warm up to tune in the system, and you get like a baseline of where you are.
Our friends at Precision Fuel and Hydration have written a number of articles on their knowledge hub over on their website, and one of them talks about the success coming down to mastering the 3 levers of endurance. That's carbs, fluids, and sodium. Essentially, it talks about knowing your numbers and how you just can't wing it. You need to know your hourly carb target, whether that's 60 or 90 grams, and exactly how much salt you're losing. Precision has the tools to take the guesswork out, especially with their 90-gram gels to hit those big carb numbers and their high-strength electrolytes to match your specific sweat rate. Don't leave your race to chance. Head to precision.com to read their latest guide on the 3 levers and build your free fuel and hydration plan today. And don't forget, place your first order and you'll get 15% off when you use the code IRP2026.
Yeah. When you were doing double threshold, obviously the shoe technology was completely different to what it is today.
Yeah.
And so, obviously the load, I suppose there would have been a higher load you doing 6 by 6 minutes back then than there is now on the body with these, super shoes. Do you think back when you were doing it, how would have training changed for you had you had these shoes?
Yeah, I mean, I could probably have done a little bit more work on the hard days, but I would still have to do easy training on the easy days. I mean, I still do my running. I do my 6 days a week. I do my threshold session. I do my 45-15, like intense training. So I'm still in fairly good shape, and I do it with super shoes now. And I still, lose control over the recovery window, even doing my training now, if I lose control over the easy days, which is like, I mean, it's something you can laugh about. I've been doing training with threshold training for 20 years. I've been doing, so much training for so many years, 45 weeks of incorrect intensity, and I'm doing too fast on my easy runs just because I would like to, and I get into trouble with super shoes. So it's like a fine line, and I write in my book about that. If you're doing more threshold training with better control, you will have more easy days of hard work. You will feel better, stay more motivated. It's a narrow line, but it's a big effect, and you can expect much more interesting and much more fun training by doing it this way, I think. Just from a recreational standpoint also.
So you're at Bislett Stadium. What would you run for 5K now if you had to?
I don't know that, and that's the beauty of it. I can still do my 45-15 sessions close to my actual old race pace, and when I do it outside, I can get down to 240 per kilometers on those sessions, but I cannot sustain it. So I do my fast trainings, and I'm happy with that, but I don't know.
Yeah. Back to those easy runs. What's too long for an easy run? Is 80 minutes too long for a recovery run?
I mean, 80 minutes to be okay. The reason why the longer recovery run in the Norwegian method is done on a Sunday is to lower the muscle tone, the most from the hill session on like a Saturday. And if you have some length of the run, it will be more effective. It will be a little bit more demanding, but you will have a better effect on the muscle tone. I would say the sweet spot, if you're not doing marathon training, is somewhere between an hour and like an hour and a half or something. It can be a little bit longer also, but not too often and not too long, I would say.
Yeah. Got a question about treadmill versus outside. So I've done quite a few treadmill sessions, and we often talk about it on our show. And the issue I always have with the treadmill is, let's say I'm running 320 per kilometer on the treadmill. Perceived effort is always really high. I always feel like I'm running the equivalent of 310s from a mechanical point of view.
Yeah.
But my heart rate is lower than what it would be to run outside. So in that instance, do you go more on perceived effort, or do you go on heart rate, where you like, obviously perceived effort then is really, really high. You almost feel like you're falling off the back of the treadmill to get your heart rate to a particular zone?
Yeah, I'll give you the answer for it. I would find somebody with a lactate meter and I would check it out. It will be interesting. I mean, you will have just one session of testing it. You will know. It's not that hard. You will find somebody with a meter and you will test it. And it sounds like this is like a very a technical way of doing it. But you have to understand that the mechanical load of running and the injury risk is quite high. So doing some smart things on the way it's probably a good idea. And that's one way of doing it. And then you will know. If you see that your effort on the treadmill doesn't correspond with your actual effort, you will do it by heart rate.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Speaking of heart rate, you also mentioned in your book that in warm conditions, your threshold heart rate will drift up. Let's say you're doing 6 by 6 minutes and it's 23 degrees.
Yeah.
Your heart rate from between the first rep and the last rep could be 7 to 10 beats higher.
Yeah.
But you're actually still in the right zone from a lactate point of view.
That's correct.
Explain that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, the heart rate is an indirect measure or value, and the lactate is closer to what is actually happens in the muscles. So what we see, of course, is if it's warm, it will drift during the session, which is also why I recommend, starting at a conservative measure. You go down maybe to 75, 80% in the beginning, and you build up to 87%. And you will see that if you do the lactate testing, that it'll be quite a big difference between the first part and the last part of the session, especially if it's warm outside.
Yeah. So back to your book, how long have you been working on it for?
I've been working on this for my whole life. So in my head, no. But writing it's I started doing parallel writing in May, June. I published a Norwegian book recently on running, which is a little bit more of a generalized book, and it's been selling quite well in Norway. And I always wanted to put my thinking in a book format, just to be able to explain everything in depth instead of an article here and there. I've been publishing articles for a long time, but this is a way of just bringing everything together and trying to help readers understand the main concepts that is driving the method.
Yeah.
And I think it's been missing. I mean, you have double threshold here, we have intensity control, but it's just a way of trying to explain everything down to why it was composed the way it was the rationale behind it.
Yeah, look, as I said, the best thing I took from the book was more around the reason why you can't actually run too hard on a session and why easy days need to be easy. It's like, because in the past it was always like, well, easy days need to be easy to recover. But then it's not until somebody's mentioned it's like this muscle tone, elasticity, and also just the extra cost of going a little bit above threshold in terms of the breakdown of the body is quite substantial. So it was nice to see that sort of in the book. Are you doing any coaching yourself anymore?
Oh no, it's too busy. And that's also a reason why I wrote this book, just to maybe help those that are interested in how to get better training days, better results, and stay injury free. In my medical practice, I have 1,270 patients on my list. So I do a lot of guiding the patients in terms of training and injury prevention, I would say. So that's the closest I get, but time is limited, especially after writing this book. So now I have to spend some time with my wife and my kids, and that's the priority for now.
Yeah. And do you want to just tell the story of, because obviously like the Ingebrigtsens have sort of brought double threshold and the Norway method back to life in a way. Like what was the transition from you basically finishing your running to then this, double threshold taking off? Were there people doing it between you and the Ingebrigtsens? Like how did that sort of relationship come about?
No, I mean, when I was training, since I was doing, such a dynamic approach, and it was so different than most others, it was, hard for people to train with me, I guess. So I had just like a couple of guys that were doing training with me, and one of them was a steepler called Bjørnar Christensen, and he was, with me on my training camps, and we were doing the training together. And he was in a small group in Sandnes together with a guy called Henrik Ingebrigtsen. So that was the connection, and they had the same coach. And the coach, of course, transferred the training directly over to Henrik. So it was a copy of the training there. And then, of course, Jack took over the training later, and he would contact me, and we would discuss training. And if you look on the regular week now for the winter for Jakob, it's exactly the same week as I did in 2004, down to all the sessions and the lactate levels and also the days of the different workouts. So it's the same, and it works. I mean, that's the point. It's a smart thing to do, because this is a low risk, high reward type of training week.
And have they changed any has it evolved at all? Have they changed any aspects?
I mean, of course, in the summer, they're doing it for the 1500, so they have an approach in the summer that is different than for the 5K, for example. That was my priority. They still do the lactate testing in the summer, have control over the intensity. The winter training, like I said, the week is the same as in 2004 when you look on the actual session and how it's being composed.
Yeah. Very good. I think we've covered just about everything off my list here. When will the book be released?
Well, it is out now, and it's in Amazon, and like I said, it's 330 some pages, and but it's written for a wide audience, from the recreational runner and up to elite. So it's part of it is technical. Part of it is concerning health and what I call running for life. So we have some tips on how to stay healthy. So it's like a good mix.
Yeah. Actually, another thing I took from the book is, and sort of you explained it, this is how the system evolved as well, was you spending time in Kenya and actually realizing that the Kenyans, although they didn't have lactate monitors and stuff like that, they had a really good gauge of effort and were generally running more controlled than Europeans and Westerners.
Yeah, I took the meter down to Kenya, and I would do the cross testing on the Kenyan runners when I was doing sessions there, and I did the same in Norway. And I could see that it was like a very big difference in terms of intensity control. The Kenyans would, in general, stay within what I call the golden zone. Like naturally, in Norway, you didn't see that at all, almost. The runners were doing their threshold runs all over the place. So that was like an eye-opener when I was down in Kenya doing my training.
And why do you think the Africans are still dominating over the longer distances? I feel like the Europeans and the Australians and they're now matching the Africans over sort of 1500, 5K, but there still seems to be a really big gap up to the marathon.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I think that in the 1500 and 5K, it's easier to with correct training, like with more threshold training and bringing the threshold higher. For example, with double threshold, it's easier to get that compensation right than compared to the marathon due to the length of the actual race. Maybe it has to do with the weight also. I mean, the lighter on the foot, it may be something that will influence the longer distances. It's difficult to measure, but I suspect that this may be the reason, one of the reasons why it is just like, in general, the body frame.
Yeah. So I just found a couple more here. This type of training, do you think it suits absolutely everybody, or are there people out there whose physiology would actually benefit from a different style of training?
Yeah, I mean, I write a longer piece about that in the chapter about the ambitious runner, and I go into like muscle fiber composition. If you've always been fast, you have an explosive general like muscular system. Likely, you should adjust the training into doing a little bit more varied type of training. Having said that, it's complicated. In my own training, I used to be like a sprinter. I would do 400 meters when I was young. So I was quite explosive, but I was enough, like my composition, muscle fiber composition, I had enough of the slow twitch fibers that I could actually get benefit from doing threshold training. And then over time, I probably had like a muscle fiber change over to more of the slow fibers. And we know that is possible. They've been doing studies on cross-country skiers. So it depends. It depends if you think that you can have that kind of like a switch over in terms of muscle fibers or not. If you're very, very explosive, you need to adjust. If you're a little bit explosive, you may want to try the training approach over time and gamble on the change. Yeah. That's a long answer for like a complicated question.
No, it's all good. And I reckon the one reason why people don't stick to this and stay patient is, and I don't know whether you ever experienced this yourself, but because your training is always very controlled, and most of these sessions, you finish them feeling, like maybe a 7, 8 maximum out of 10.
Yeah.
Were you ever worried that by training so comfortably, generally all the time, when it came to racing, you would lose that ability to really put yourself into the hurt locker?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, in general, I would say that for most it's not a problem. I mean, you will, when you get into a race situation and you're feeling great, you will push on that race. And I go into length in the book just, on that aspect, how you need to understand that you would like the internal load to be as high as possible in terms of like race specificity and not external load, which is like the actual pace. You don't need that as much as people think. You get it from the exercise session, like the once a week, and that's enough for most.
You also made a good point in your book about most people just think that having tired and heavy legs is part of distance running, but it actually shouldn't be. And I suppose if you rock up to a race and you don't have that heaviness in your legs, it makes it much easier to push hard.
Yeah, and I write a section. I mean, the section in the book that I was closest enough to take away was the section where I go into muscle tone and where I've been palpating like thousands of runners and seeing the difference. Like I explained, even Carsten Warholm's, thighs, Henry Rono. So it's like a little section there. But the main point is this. Most will have suboptimal muscle tone, and it doesn't need to be that way. In my case now, for example, on most of my sessions, I feel good, I feel strong, and I feel bouncy, because I always do the control still. Being 47 years old, I can still run fresh on most of my sessions because I have control, and that is so much more fun than being in and out or being heavy during the training. So you don't need that. You can have lots of load, but you can feel fresh on most of the sessions.
Yeah. And just getting back to sort of the build up to major races, like let's say you're in the middle of your international season and you've got, I don't know, three big 5K races coming up.
Yeah.
Like obviously there would be sessions where you do run like really hard. Like how in a month in the lead up to the season, like how many sessions a month would you have where they're a 9 out of 10? Any?
No, not at all. The exception, I would say, if you do like the 1500 meter, 800 meter, and you're doing like the last type of tune-up before the actual like main peak of the season. Other than that, you don't need it. I talk in the book about doing the controlled lactate testing also on the more intense type of sessions. And like I said, I came from like the Peter Cole type of training. Vebjørn Rodal, the Olympic champion in 800 in 1996, his type of training was dominating in Norway when I was a young athlete. So I mean, I've been doing so many intense sessions during my own running, so I know what doing anaerobic work is. But you don't need that. It's not needed. It's simple as that.
Yeah. And I guess your drip feeding means that you never actually get yourself to a 9 out of 10. You're doing it you're obviously adding intensity, but you're doing it in a controlled way where you're still only finishing the session at a 7 or 8 out of 10.
That's the thing. So you're kind of trying to do the anaerobic work where you still have like the major component being the aerobic domination of it, I would say. So you will have like the subjective feeling also. Will be different if your anaerobic threshold is very high. You will kind of feel like you're floating through it. You have control. It's just a different way of feeling during the session, I would say.
Yeah, and I'll let you go, but I just wanted to ask you. I had a look at your World Athletics profile, and you can see these, your 5,000 meters, and it basically shows you all the people that you raced. And I saw that you raced Kipchoge like 7 times. You raced Gebre Selassie, Paul Tergat. Like, what was, looking back at it now, like in that sort of golden era of athletics, like they are, obviously really, really big names. What was it like rubbing shoulders with those guys?
Like I talked about in the introduction of my book, that when I was in the final of the World Championships in 2005, I was sitting there waiting in the cold room, and there were 13 guys appearing in the room, and they were all African runners. And then Craig Mottram came in. He was the last guy. He came almost late. And it was me and him, we were the only non-African. We were both very, very white. And it was just a strange situation. So it was just an interesting time. And in terms of Kipchoge, he was the last guy, I think, that I was racing that is still competing today or just to retire.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for giving up so much of your time. Really appreciate it. We'll put the link to your book in the show notes. But yeah, as I said, it's a real privilege to be able to chat to the guy who invented sort of the training system that I've used aspects of before. So thanks, Marius. And hopefully we can have you on again at some point.
Thank you.
Thanks to Precision Fuel and Hydration for partnering with us for this weekend episode. Chances are you're gearing up for a race yourself, but how dialed in is your race day nutrition? Precision Fuel and Hydration makes it simple with a free online planner. Visit precisionhydration.com and get your numbers today.